Hey
Hello.
guys. Sorry about that. I was in the wrong Zoom. I was
No, you're totally good. Can you hear us all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Nice to meet you. I'm Sabby.
I'm Dalton.
Hey guys. I'm Rich. Good to meet you.
Hi.
Yeah. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm just juggling some work and some meetings. It's my usual Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for squeezing us in to support
Yeah.
the college radio and all that. You
Yeah.
mentioned that you're operating near Irvine. Are you in the greater Orange County area or?
Yeah, I live in Tustin.
Oh,
Oh,
wow, that's actually really close.
awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
so we're heading down to Irvine all the time.
Nice.
Usually to get boba or shopping or something.
Yeah.
That's what you do here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plenty of that here.
Yeah.
Um, okay.
Well, we'll jump right in then.
Yeah. I guess we'll start with something. We were talking about influences. We did some background research on your influences, and we saw some awesome ones that we like to put on the radio, like Joni Mitchell and things like that. But
Yeah.
wanted to perhaps ask about some non-musical influences you might have, or maybe from the environment or from like a poetry or literature
Hmm.
or something extra musical.
Yeah, well, I always tell this story, which is I was working on this game, Hyperlight Drifter, which came out in 2016. And I worked on it for a few years, maybe 2 or 3 years. And towards the end of development, I was struggling a little bit to figure out what to do. I think I was just putting a lot of pressure on myself. And the game has all these different biomes. So the world building was really important. And I remember taking a break to read the Hayao Miyazaki manga, Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind.
That's a great
And
one.
that really just, I don't know, it really helped me get over the finish line. I think it almost became like an addendum to the world, even though it was unrelated. Like I thought of it kind of in as being related to the project, and that was really inspiring. It really like helped me find like a new gear as far as like just that inspiration source for writing music. And so that was like a really interesting thing to learn that you could kind of like piggyback other things onto a project. Like it's even though it's not a direct relationship. So yeah, that's one example.
Yeah, that's great. That's got to be in my top three Ghibli movies.
Yeah, that's really cool. We were discussing how in creating atmospheric music, you really can't draw from only music or only the atmosphere, and it's a very unique quest of trying to tie those things together, and then even in a video game, collaborating movement. So another question we had for you is, what's one project where you really feel like your music was truly immersed, you had a lot of creative control? You mentioned in some of your interviews that a lot of the times music is added on as an afterthought at the end of an almost finished work. So, what is a piece that you think is the opposite of that, and you really got to have a say in all of the creative process?
Yeah, they projects come in all different shapes and sizes, and so do collaborators. So, I mean, a large majority of, say, like the, film and TV projects I've worked on, I've worked with a creative director who had a really strong vision for what they wanted, but there have been a fair number of game projects where I've been given more free reign to kind of explore and come up with the sound world and the identity of the music. And so I think about projects like Fez, which came out in 2012, which is a game where I basically just worked from a blank canvas, just writing stuff and throwing it into the game and seeing how it worked. That was like a very cathartic project for me. Like I had a lot of creative freedom. And it was one of the first big games I ever worked on as far as just the amount of content. Um, I think about the mini Metro mini motorways, that series of games where I was brought in to build a procedurally generated music system, like a soundtrack. And beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot of creative direction from the team. It was, a lot of trust placed in me to kind of figure it out. And so, I really like that part of the process, of the conceptual process. And it's not to say that I don't enjoy working with like a stronger vision holder, someone who has a really clear sense of what they're looking for with music. That can also be a really satisfying process. It can be really hard and demanding, but sometimes at the end of the day, you're like, wow, I never would have got here if I hadn't had this other person pushing me in this direction. And yes, sometimes that turns out amazing, and other times maybe you look back and you're like, maybe it didn't quite go the way you wanted it to, or maybe you're happy with it, but it was really hard having that
Yeah.
experience. So it really varies pretty dramatically. But I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to be put in those positions, to be challenged and to, find myself writing music that I never thought I would get to write, whether it's horror music or orchestral film noir or, like any litany of genres that I've found myself like occupying because the project called for it in one way or another.
Yeah. And I guess to follow up with that, I would be curious to hear what's your process for, or your approach to collaboration with someone who maybe does have a stronger creative vision, like Alex Preston or something like that.
Yeah, well, so in the case of Alex, that was kind of a hybrid situation because, I've worked with creative directors who were more exacting about what they wanted, especially in film, because editing film together with temporary music is like a big part of the culture of film.
Hmm.
So, there tends to be directors and editors sometimes they tend to have more ownership over the direction of the music. Whereas in games, it's less common or there's less of an established culture around that. So in the case of like Hyperlight Drifter, um, working with Alex, it was there were a lot of conversations about the world and me just kind of gathering information about the themes and that sort of thing. And then, writing music, sending it over to him to get his reaction to things. And that definitely steered the ship a lot as far as, the things that resonated with him. Although I have to say, like, I think he he was already a fan of my music, so it made it a little easier. And I think for the most part, he liked a lot of the things that I was doing. There were like one or two tracks where they weren't his favorite, but I kind of pushed him on it. But there were also like we went through this process at one point where I was just looking for ideas, where I just like uploaded like 100 piano sketches in a folder, and I was like, let's just like go through these and flag stuff that you think is cool. And he flagged this like this one little bit as like, oh, this should be like the theme of the whole game.
Wow.
Uh, and I was like, yeah, that's actually like, and he had a good sense for it. So there's this like three chord kind of thing that's in the trailers and stuff that he kind of picked out, he isolated from these piano sketches that I did pick ones that I thought could work, but he like, he was definitely a big part of that process.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. Another thing that I'm curious about is you mentioned that there are a lot of creative projects that you really challenge yourself for. I know there is one, the it's on the tip of my tongue, where you worked with an orchestral composition, which you hadn't done before. What are some
Yeah.
other pieces that you've really taken yourself outside of your regular norm for, and what's your method of going about those things?
Yeah, so the project you're talking about is Under the Silver Lake, and that was the follow-up film with David Robert Mitchell, who I did a synth score for It Follows. So obviously it was a very different experience, and that really came about because um, he put the faith in me to do that, being kind of an unproven orchestral composer, and I think in general like. And this is my thinking around it has changed over time. I think when I was younger, I was a little more driven by ambition of like, oh, I want to do something that's really challenging and make it really good. So Under the Silver Lake is an example where, normally I might be comfortable stepping like one step out of my comfort zone, and Under the Silver Lake was probably like three or four. Like it was really hard. Um, I spent a really long time on it, and I could not have done it without a team of people helping me. Basically, I had to figure out early on, like, okay, what are the areas that I'm going to focus on? Like, what are my strengths? What are the things that I want to focus on? What are
Mhm,
the things that I don't want to, put a bunch of time into that I don't have?
mhm.
And really, that boiled down to, I'm going to focus on writing music and producing music, like doing all the production. And the thing that piggybacked onto that for me was arranging. It was picking the instruments, the general voicings of things, like, things that I was comfortable with. And then I still had to figure out how to, you know, get the sounds for all those things. But beyond that, like like figuring out how to, do the notation for the musicians and make sure everything is in the right registers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I had a team helping me with that. That
Wow.
started with a fellow composer, Kyle Newmaster, who is a classically trained orchestral composer, and he came on as a producer, and he basically helped facilitate, hiring of the orchestra, booking the studio time, conductor, parts preparation, the music contractor to hire all the musicians, all this stuff. Like, so that was like a education for me, like, just seeing how that gets made, how that all happens, how it comes together. And Yeah, so I took a lot from that experience. It was probably too hard. Like I don't know if I would do something that hard again, but I try to find little things that I can do on every project that are new and going to be a little bit of a challenge. And that's part of what keeps things interesting for me, whether it's a
Yeah.
piece of software or working with a new instrument, working in a new way. I always try to find some element that I can do that with.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's a really awesome project.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
kind of
Cool.
like a Cinderella story, just walking in, being like, okay, I'll figure it out. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what you were talking about like the instrumentation and trying to piece that together and which register and all that, I was sort of thinking how that's like the analog equivalent of picking the plugins for maybe a synth perhaps or what
Mhm.
tools you're going to use beyond just the harmonies and sort of what textures you want to put into your more electronic or synth music too. I saw recently you uploaded to YouTube a plugin that you made or a script, a contact script, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what's your approach to I guess making those tools that work for you or getting the
Yeah.
exact sound you want out of maybe a digital space to piggyback off of the orchestral space?
Yeah, so before I get into that, it's funny because, like on projects like on Under the Silver Lake, in addition to the orchestra, like I'm always thinking about plugins and
Yeah.
something new. And so like part of the sound of that film is like granular reverb, which was something I'd never really used before. And so in every project, I'm thinking like, what are some things that I can do? Both, usually it is in the digital space because that's kind of what I'm most comfortable with.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like so, as far as like software tools go, I got into programming a little bit after I started making music. I was still in college and I went to the first annual Global Game Jam event.
Nice.
And I was really inspired by that experience to try to make my own game. And so I went home and I found some tutorials online and um, I ended up taking like a Space Invaders kind of like tutorial and like flipping it on side and turning it into a game where you walk around licking snowflakes, generating
Oh, was that
music.
January?
January, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that project kind of like branched out into a whole bunch of stuff, whether it was the procedural music projects I worked on, like Mini Metro, Mini Motorways, or personal projects. So, I mean, after Mini Metro, I had the idea which coincided with my DAW, Logic Pro, which is what I've been using for a long time. They included a system where you could make your own MIDI plugins.
Hmm.
And so I use that as an opportunity to start building my own tools. And any tool that I was using that had like a way to do that, I started doing it. So I made a bunch of MIDI scripts, contact scripts, and then as I got more into Unity, I started making DSP, like audio plugins. And so I've kind of just developed like a hobby of making these tools. And sometimes the tools are solving a specific problem that I feel like I have, and other times they're just like investigations. They're just fun things to work on. So the thing that I just released, Panoram, is like
Hmm.
it's just an idea I had, and it just became a part of my process when I'm building like sample instruments. Like I'll throw this thing on it and just help me with how to stage, like how to pan stuff in interesting ways, and that's just how it kind of comes about. And Yeah, I'd like to use my tools more often than I do. But it takes time to like integrate new tools into your process. Like you just have a way that you do it and you just kind of do it. So,
Yeah, wow. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you sort of just dive right in and teach yourself these new skills as you need them or as they come. How was your music education journey, I suppose? We saw that you got into guitar a little bit late. Um, I,
Mhm.
was it seven,
17?
17? Is that
Yeah, I think, yeah, high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a lot of people at the studio who are, joining maybe because they're looking for an outlet in music or they are like
Mhm.
looking to maybe pivot towards something more creative or um, would you have any maybe perspective or advice on people who are trying to get into art maybe later?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple of things that I think would be important to mention. Um, I think, I think it's never too late to get into art. It may be too late if you're trying to do it as a living, and that depends on your your talent and your drive, right? Like
Mm.
how determined you are to make it work. I think for me, I have always been driven to make stuff, and it started with visual art. Like I was a graphic designer,
Oh,
and
wow.
that was my initial kind of career trajectory. So, I started doing freelance work when I was like 13 or 14.
Oh, wow.
I worked at a website company in high school, making websites, logos, print, like business card, print design.
Wow.
And I went to school for it, and I dropped out to do music. So,
Awesome.
but I never stopped liking that stuff. I just wanted to do music more, and my graphic design background, my technical background with web development, all of that funneled into learning how to program and also like, you know, all the work that I put into my branding, like my website, my logo, my art album artwork. I've done a lot of my own album artwork, done some music videos, like all that kind of stuff. So it's all kind of connected. The music came later, I think in part because I don't know, visual art was just a more immediate thing for me. Like I was doodling like since I was small, and also I grew up in a musical family. Like my sister was a singer, my stepfather was a music director at our church, my mom was a singer and played the piano like classically.
Oh, wow.
So everyone else was making music. And I was like, more I guess wanted to have something that I could do where I could retreat. So that's why that's part of, I think, why I got into like making stuff. Um, but at the same time, I was always around music and I liked music, and, I had my own things that I wanted to do. So I think when I did start playing music, I had all this like pent up creative energy for it. And so, um, it very quickly went from like, picking up the guitar in high school, taking lessons for a couple years,
Hmm.
figuring out how to record myself playing riffs and stuff, to learning, getting on the computer and learning like GarageBand, and like how to like use tab like guitar tab software to like save my ideas. And um, I had the software that like was guitar tab, but it also was like kind of like a sequencer, like a DAW, like you could do MIDI in it. You could arrange entire songs in it. And so I started using that. And um, I just got really excited about the prospect of making music and like making songs, making albums. I got into making concept albums. I just had all this like creative energy for it. And so that really like catapulted me on this trajectory.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah, I noticed that your website is just fantastically designed. It's really interesting. And
Thank you.
we have talked about on the show how like album covers and album art have become less and less important because now you just see them on the computer. You don't really get to hold them and look at all those details. I'm
Yeah.
curious as to what role does the developing in visual art, really initially setting your trajectory to end up in visual art, how does that influence your music? You mentioned how it influences programming, but how does that help your creative process in like composing and developing new music?
I think that my visual background probably helped me get into scoring, like working to visuals. Because even before I was scoring, I was making concept albums where I was making album artwork. I was making artwork that was meant to kind of be a counterpart to what I was writing. And I think just I just have that tendency to kind of make that connection. And so I think, yeah, like my one of my first concept albums is called 8 Byte and the Warring Nations, and it's inspired by Lord of the Rings. Um, and so I was thinking conceptually about music, and I think that the visuals are a component of that. But I think having that natural inclination towards thinking about music in a narrative way, it kind of helped me move into doing soundtracks because that's what soundtracks are, right?
Mm.
They're stories. Not to say that other music isn't a story, but it's like that's like the primary like focus of a soundtrack to some degree. So yeah, I guess there's something there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I would even I'm thinking of some projects like Somewhere Our Limbs Lost in the Distance where really
Hmm.
the music for me even takes the front seat as far as driving the narrative and um it was really impressive to me the synergy between the visuals and audio, especially in that project.
Oh,
Um
cool. Thank you.
yeah, um how would you say you approach sort of catching that connection between visual and sound?
Hmm. Um, well, in the case of like that short film somewhere, when I have the opportunity to do not just the music, but to do the sound design, it gives me the opportunity to very easily play with the boundaries between those two things.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things that I think that short film has, and something that I've tried to do in other projects too, is like where you have natural elements that are part of the sound design, like there's a clock ticking or whatever, and then it just sort of like melts into the music. And
Hmm.
so that's one example I can think of off the top of my head. There's a clock ticking and it's ticking in a rhythmic fashion that just kind of like folds into the music, to just kind of make everything feel a little bit more cohesive, um, and just like I don't know, just having those visuals to tap into, it's like a conductor.
Hmm.
It's like it's the creative prompt. It just gives you direction on what to do, what to try, you know. Um, I find that it's really necessary to have some kind of concept. It's a lot harder to make music when there's no concept.
Yeah.
Even if it's like it took me a while to learn how to like say someone says, "Hey, I just want I have this it's a music game and you can, like a rhythm game and you can just make whatever you want." Um, I mean, I love doing that now, but there was a time where that was like more hard for me because I put all this pressure on myself to make it just really cool and I didn't have any concept of what that meant. It just had to be cool. Whereas
Yeah.
now I think it's like it's a little easier because I'll find some sound or something and I'll just kind of lean into that and like the concept will come around, it'll come out naturally. And I'll be able to, as soon as I can identify what the concept is, it makes the writing a lot easier because I can just kind of like go down a particular path. So between that and probably being less precious about everything, has made a huge difference in being able to write music much more easily.
Yeah,
Just like not having this like existential dread that your song is gonna suck.
yeah,
Like I just don't have it anymore. Like if it's no good, it's it happens and it's not doesn't mean it's fun, but um I think I've done it enough that I know that I can either I can kind of suffer through it and make it better, or I can scrap if I need to, I can scrap it. So
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that higher level understanding of creativity as a concept, not necessarily just one mode of creation is really important in unifying pieces and making a continuity beyond just like, oh, this is the music and this is the art and this is the film. So you can really tell that in your music and the pieces that you've worked on. It seems like they were all created almost by one person, really, really um synergistically, as you mentioned.
Yeah, yeah.
cool. That's awesome.
Um, we are approaching the 9:30 mark. So, I guess if I was to ask you one final thing to go, what would be your advice to listeners who are invested in art?
Um, my advice would be not to forget why you make art in the first place. Like at the end of the day, I make art because I enjoy it. It's fun. And any time in my career where I've taken it too seriously, I've essentially forgotten that, and it's no longer something that I enjoy. And
Hmm.
so, whether it was putting too much emphasis on my art and that led to problems, or because I was neglecting other parts of my life and just trying to like force it all into the art category.
Yeah,
Whether it's that or whatnot, I think yeah, it's something to be nurtured and um, I guess the other thing I would say for at least for me is that the I've found that I enjoy what I do more if I don't do it as much.
Hmm.
If I don't, try to, pull all-nighters and work like, 10 hours in a row, like every day, I find that when I can sit down for 3 or 4 hours and do stuff and then kind of feel like, okay, I'm going to take
Yeah.
either the rest of the day or, a significant chunk of the day before I do it again. If I can do stuff like that really contributes to, I think, not only how much I enjoy what I do, but also I tend to do it more efficiently, and I think I do a better job. So it's kind of a win-win-win.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard mentioned sometimes that art is better not used as a tool, but for art's sake. Do you think you kind of subscribe to that philosophy of just kind of doing a work just to do it, not necessarily to fulfill any bounds?
Um, I don't know. It's hard for me to speak to that because my whole career has been about finding the overlap between art and utility.
Yeah.
So I'm not even sure I'm qualified to answer that one because I think like I've always had colleagues who maybe were a little more like off the cuff about how they approach things. And I would admire that ability to be that way. I think that uh, I think there's a certain artfulness to finding the utility. There's definitely a craft to it, and I enjoy the craft element as much as I enjoy the art element. And I think as I've gotten older, I probably see myself more as a craftsman than as an artist. Um, because um, I don't know. My work has gotten more technical just by necessity. I hope that it's still expressing things that need to be expressed, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely an interesting comparison. I hadn't thought about the craftsmanship being compared to art. They work together.
But yeah, your work definitely does show the handiness of a craftsman. I
Cool.
My introduction was Bodies, 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 and that
Oh,
was
wow.
just an awesome movie. Yeah,
Cool.
it was perfect. So yeah, well, I think that's the end of our time, but thank you so much for coming on to talk with us. It was really interesting to hear your perspectives on art and music and creating in general.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
my
you so
pleasure.
much. It
Yeah,
was
my
really
pleasure. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye. You too.